Cool. So, hello, welcome to the sixth episode of Hands Up. For those who are listening for the first time, I'm Nitish, and I work as a product manager at a startup, and this is my passion project because I'm just interested in reading books. And I ended up having great conversation with people at my book club and my friends about it. And I thought this should just be a podcast, and these conversations should be accessible to other people as well. And also, I see these as you know kind of a record of all the great conversations. Like my idea, which I also shared with other people in other episodes, is if you see a great moment, you can take a picture and preserve it. But it's hard to preserve a conversation. So it's me taking a picture of a conversation. In that sense, maybe it will serve me as well as a memory when I'm 50 years old or 60 years old. I can go back and listen to this. So today we have Deeksha Sharma. Uh, she is uh, she is someone who I interacted with on Twitter. I think you would be a better person to give the intro. Over to you, Deeksha.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for having me here, Nitesh. And hi everyone, I am Deeksha. So I'm mostly a marketer during the day, but I really love reading. I discovered reading during my school days, and since then I have been hooked onto things. So that's why this opportunity that Nitesh presented to talk about something that I love doing was absolutely in my alley, and that's why I'm looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Yeah, so the book that we're going to talk about is the one which uh, sort of stunned me, and it was so cathartic reading this book for me. And the book is White Nights by Dostoevsky. His full name is Fyodor Dostoevsky. And fun fact, I also learned a bit of Russian in my ninth standard because one of my history teachers knew Russian. So obviously, I think I can write and read also. So,
Okay, that's
but
interesting.
yeah, uh, so this book, I think I'll just speak a bit about how I discovered or how I ended up reading this. Um, So again, my discoveries of Dostoevsky is through Twitter itself, where I spend a lot of time, unfortunately or fortunately. So there was this person called at the rate BTWN underscore dimensions, between dimensions or something of that sort. She was some sort of Dostoevsky obsessed person, and I ended up, she had this podcast where she was speaking alone. It was like her voice notes. So I heard it and like I bought the Brothers Karamazov, but I was not able to make much progress after 170 pages or something. I got stuck. Then I felt I should read something smaller by Dostoevsky so that I'll gain confidence and familiarity, and finally I'll be able to appreciate this guy's literature. Then I was just randomly walking around in Kunzum and I found White Nights. It was right on the table near the desk where they do billing. And I felt, okay, this is a short read. It must also add to my Goodreads records, my annual target, and all of that. So I picked it up and I read it. And I was, absolutely devastated by the time I finished it because the book accurately described the last relationship and how it ended. So, after that, I became a Dostoevsky devotee, and I also changed my Twitter display name as Dostoevsky devotee itself. And now here I am, a new devotee.
Talking to another devotee.
Oh, you are also devotee, is it? So, how did you discover this?
So I guess My path was actually also similar. I picked up Brothers Karamazov. I thought I can handle a big book, but to my disappointment, I discovered I could not. And then I thought, okay, let me get an introduction to this author's tone of writing and all of that first, and let's do it with a shorter work. So I searched for like introductory stuff that Dostoevsky had written. I basically found this White Knights, Notes from Underground, and a couple more things. And then I started picking them. So White Knights was the smallest of all of them, and also seemed the most accessible given the context. It also appeared to me like to be something which people have loved a lot because I found that it has many adaptations. So I picked it the first thing, and that's where it happened. It was like I guess 1 year ago when I first read White Knights. Since then, I've read it multiple times actually. So that was the process.
Multi, I mean, what made you read it multiple times?
Not because I want to hurt myself, but mostly because it inspired me and a friend of mine to create something more based on it.
Hmm.
So in that process, I then kept on going back to it. And even last week before we sat down for this recording, I thought, okay, let's do it once more. No harm.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so that brings me to, the characters. So obviously we discussed before this, we are not going to give out any spoilers.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I do want people to read this.
Right.
Um, so let's not do spoilers.
Yes.
But it is very, very, it has only few characters, right? Like
Yeah.
three or four characters, I guess. It's,
Only
um,
three primary characters. Rest are even side characters
yeah.
actually.
So, what do you make of these characters? Like, at least the narrator, who is unnamed, he sort of resembles, uh, he's the mascot of male loneliness, I guess. Like, especially in a big city like Delhi. I think he's also I'm also a representative case of this particular character, but not anymore because now I have built great friendships in different communities. But before that, I think I was, because there was a lot of work stress. And I mean, initially for the first year, I think I was working on Saturdays as well.
Oh,
So only in the last 1.5 years, I think I have Saturdays and Sundays off. So it was mostly work, and then it was like a huge void after work. So I don't know. The book also starts like he's narrating his experience in the city, and he's telling it is
yes.
such a depressing place.
Yeah,
And
he's basically describing his relationship with the city, and right then we get this idea that his relationships are very one sided.
yeah,
Like his happiness comes if the person in the city is happy, and he's sad because it is getting empty now. That sort of thing happens. His uh, relationships are not with the people in the city at all. They are just with the city. If the city's mood is up, his mood is up. If the city's mood is down, his mood is down.
and we are also not told about the occupation of this guy, right?
Right. Yes. Yes.
So I think not having a job made his situation worse. I think in that sense, I'm at least one level above. I mean, obviously, I don't want to say that my life is so shitty, but at least in this context, obviously, if we go into that exact story, then obviously we'll be giving out the spoilers.
Right.
So, but still, I think a large majority of guys would probably be experiencing this, whether they have a job or not. I mean, it's also interesting that this guy has no family. The main character in this particular story. Uh, I mean, we are also not told what exactly has happened to the
Right.
family of the main character.
His existence is very much focused on his dreams, actually. Even more than the job, he talks about his dreams. At one point, he gives a whole monologue about what his dreams are like, what sort of imaginations he has, and basically, he pictures himself as a hero in an imaginary tale. So he himself is not very focused on what his day job is like. He's not very concerned about it.
Yeah.
He doesn't really care about the finances and all of that. Like, will I go home? Will I have a nice bed to sleep in? That are not the questions in his head at all.
I think so. For someone who has not read this book, who has no context about whom we are speaking about, or what is the the broad story here.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, since you also reread this once more, why don't you give a small, spoiler-free outline of the entire story so that people get a context about what we are talking about?
Okay, okay, cool. So let's try. So we meet the protagonist, and he's telling the story of that time he had a very sentimental experience. So this is something I really appreciate, that it is called a sentimental experience and not essentially a romantic one. And he recalls this episode of his life where one day he was just walking and he saw a girl crying. And when he sees the girl crying, he's first thinking of going out to her, but then he holds himself back. There's a lot of hesitation right there. But eventually, he sees that the girl is being disturbed by a random person on the street, and he eventually decides to step in and help the girl out. And she starts crying right there. She's quite distressed, she's quite anxious, and they get talking. And they spend the next 4 nights in a similar manner. They both meet at a fixed hour and talk every night. They talk all about their lives, what's going on, what's going wrong, what are the hopes, what are the plans that they might have, may not have. The existence of that plan is itself a question in the conversations. And those are the conversations which give us the backstory of both these people. And that's where we get hooked to them. I won't reveal the conclusion for obvious reasons,
Yeah,
but this is where it happens. So if you have ever thought of going to a random person on a windy evening and talking to them, this is what is happening here.
yeah. I mean, I think we can stretch it slightly more than that,
Yeah.
because it also gives more context about the other conversations we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
around this. So the conversation that this stranger and the woman whose
Hmm.
name is
Nice
Nastinka,
thing. Yeah.
the conversations they have is about how this the narrator is feeling as he speaks to the
Right.
woman,
Right.
and the narrator is also deprived of human interaction.
Yes. Yes.
He's so deprived that even if he speaks to one human being, his entire day is like his entire day's mood goes.
According to that interaction.
Yeah, and he's also getting very hooked to Nastenka
Mm-hmm.
because someone is finally listening to this guy.
Right.
And Nastenka also, comes across this guy and she starts dumping on
Dumping.
him.
Yes.
She completely dumps her entire story to this guy, the narrator. And essentially, the at the center of a story is a certain romantic relationship
Right.
where she is living along with her grandmother.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Grandmother.
grandmother, right?
Yes.
So she is living with her grandmother, and she has a lodger who comes to her home, and somehow there is a connection between the lodger and Nastenka.
They also connect over books actually. He
Exactly.
sends her books to read, and she
Yeah.
finally falls in love with Pushkin and a couple of more authors,
Yeah.
and that's where they get started.
So they connect over books, and there's a relationship which sort of starts. But the guy he leaves for Moscow, right?
Yes. Yes. Moscow.
For a year or something,
Yes.
and he becomes this kind of a very I don't know, non-communicative guy.
I guess we also have to keep in mind the context of when this is happening. Like this is back in 1850s, maybe.
But I think she was expecting a letter or something.
Right, right. She was definitely
So
expecting letters. Yes.
even when this guy is in Moscow, Nastenka was expecting letters, but
Yeah.
she gets none.
Yes.
And there's no reason given in the book as to why she is
Never.
not receiving these
Mm-hmm.
letters. And obviously, the narrator is already has a huge void in his life, and he continuously keeps on thanking Nastenka for speaking to him,
Yes.
which is
Which is
which is
quite
like very
comedic to
very
us.
comical to us,
Yeah.
but if you are in the shoes of this kind of a lonely guy who has no hope, no dreams, no task to do, and everything is in the fantasy world, right? So if there is even a single drop of possibility of happiness, he just laps it up. So there's
Exactly.
also that quote, right? Like if someone is not fed love with a spoon, they will learn how to lick it off a
Of
knife
life,
or
yes,
something.
yes.
So he's not licking off a knife here, but it's like he's feasting on breadcrumbs.
Yes, and actually, that is the case I feel with both of them. Nastenka herself had some good experiences 1 year back, but over this 1 year,
So
she,
at least she has something to remember and
yes,
replay in her head.
yes. So
For this
that
guy, there's nothing to replay also.
sad fate, but yeah, that is where the difference between the two people comes in, and that's why
Yeah,
they react very differently to things in life. One
yeah,
has seen some hope, the other is
yeah,
only lost in dreams.
yeah. So at this juncture, this guy, he tries to be the savior. He
Yes,
also has a savior complex.
yes.
And Nastenka, I don't know whether it is intentional or unintentional. She has some kind of a damsel in distress kind of a,
So like
vibe.
Nastenka seemed to me to a person to be a person who's like very much picturing herself to be a heroine of a good novel of those eras.
Yeah,
In the sense that she wants a hero to come in and change her life. She's looking forward to that moment and she's pretty sure that it will happen. Unlike the
yeah,
dreamer who's like, it's over, nothing's gonna happen.
yeah. He has particularly given up on life entirely.
Right.
So at this juncture, he tries to be the savior of Nastenka, who is like living in the memories of this guy. And I think that is the place where we should stop because the ending of this very one side, I don't know, I don't think it's a one sided equation. There is some sort of interplay between both of them. But
Definitely.
one guy is more attached to the possibilities than the other. Like Nastenka is she's really not mentally ready to imagine anything with a
She's
new
sold
person.
on it, but she's like, if nothing works out, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, so basically the narrator offers Nastenka to start a new relationship and have a bright future, this that. But Nastenka herself is she's not excited about it.
Yeah,
She's
she's
not
like,
mentally ready to switch to a new person.
right,
But if at all she sees it as a way out, as a
right,
possibility,
exactly.
and she's very non-committal about it. And the ending of it is something which will surprise a lot of readers. And I don't know, it might shock you to different extent based on what kind of trauma you're carrying yourself.
It will hurt you for sure, definitely,
Yeah,
specifically with the lines it ends.
exactly. So it's not like a Bollywood movie. Like in Indian stories or Indian cinema, there's always a happy ending,
Right,
and people want to go home with a happy ending. But because I think we are also addicted to happy endings because we have not seen it ourselves in real life, and I mean maybe we have, but it's not. It doesn't come so
it doesn't
often.
come with that cinematic value, no, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
hit the
come with
same.
cinematic value, and also how often does every
Hmm,
story end on a happy note?
right.
It's quite rare. I mean, I was thinking of reading the last line because it doesn't really give out any spoiler as such. If you see, um,
I think it gives out a lot
okay,
of
then
lot of things.
yeah, it might now that we have discussed all of this. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel there's a lot of reality packed into this,
Definitely.
and the reality and the intensity of his writing is also very very engaging.
I guess the intensity comes in because both the people are coming from a very hollow place. Like both have experienced voids in their lives. And the first thing that they get, they latch onto it and they just bring all their emotions out in full force. So like if you look at the older adaptations of this, even like the Russian films that have been made, even the dialogue delivery and that sort of thing is very intense. It is very over the top. We won't even feel like this is real life.
Hmm. And also, what do you make of this female character? Like, I mean, since you have reread this character,
What do I make of Nastenka? Nastenka is definitely someone interesting, but firstly, to me, she offers a contrast to the protagonist. The protagonist goes unnamed throughout the book. Nastenka's name is called upon so many times. She asks him all about his life. She listens to his rants. He's ranting typical nonsense that any girl would not like to hear today.
hmm,
And she listens. She bears it all, but she doesn't ask his name.
yeah,
She's definitely not interested in that guy. She's looking for support, but not that guy in particular, not any guy in particular at that moment. So as we talked earlier, she's very non-committal even till the end. She's like, maybe one day things will work out between us, but definitely not right now. We are not there yet.
hmm,
And that is the sort of hope that she carries, that maybe the older one will definitely come back because he can't break my heart like that. So for me, Nastenka is someone who's living her own fantasy. To be honest, she does not permit herself to just be this guy's heroine or that guy's heroine. She has a life of her own, and she is quite fixed in terms of uh, what she wants out of it. She wants to get out. She's quite clear on that. The method of it, the emotional baggage of it, those are some things that she does not have any clarity on at all, as we see in her dialogues as well, because she goes back and forth multiple times, says this, that. But she knows what she wants in her life, and she has a story of her own, which is a huge deal actually for a female character to have, I think.
having her own story.
Yeah, we could have simply limited her to a heroine who's after a guy,
Uh,
but she's not that. She has a grandmother to deal with. She has had her trauma. She has reasons to be stuck to a guy. She has reasons to fall in love with that guy. It's
hmm,
not just because she saw a guy, she got infatuated, and now she's a damsel in distress. She
hmm.
wants to sort of live out that fantasy without actually being in that role.
And I also feel really, impressed by Dostoevsky because how clearly has he read, the female mind, which
Okay.
is so difficult for a man to do. Because after reading this book,
Yeah.
I have interacted with so many women. Like they have all told, I mean, once you talk to them for more than a month or something,
Right.
as friends also, not just, I mean, most of them I've spoken in a friendly context itself,
Right.
and I've come across more than 3 4 people who are like emotionally attached to a guy who is not physically available there, like
Okay.
he's 1,000 kilometers away, or he's 300 kilometers away, or he's in different a different state, like you have to take a flight to reach there. And they are obsessed with such guys, and that guy is not even committing to that lady, like he's only saying I'm available, I'm like still traumatized by my past, I am working on myself, or he's absolutely a very, what do you say, unpleasant human, like he's
Okay.
texting 4 or 5 other women, and he's following all these other models on Instagram. So the lady is obsessed with such guy, and she is not able to form a healthy relationship with a guy in the same city with someone who is actually interested in her. So I see that the character of Nastenka is still living in my own surroundings, and I see such the moment I hear such a story as like, oh, you are another Nastenka here. But I obviously I don't want to judge them, because I also ended up hearing this podcast called On Attachment,
Okay.
where the person keeps exploring different models of romantic relationships. One is called anxious avoidant, and another is called anxiously attached. So this is the worst combination. So just to give a summary of this, I think you're already aware of this
Yeah, I have a little bit of context, but let's talk. Let's just
because
go
I
ahead.
have heard 56 episodes of
God,
this.
God,
Because I was really there are 177 episodes. I think I've heard like 56, 57.
nice.
Because while driving to office, I just play some podcast, and this really got me interested because it also helped me understand myself as well. So the anxiously attached person is like he is not sure. He feels there is some defect in him,
Hmm.
and he has to be useful to his partner to be worthy of that relationship. He's unable to see his own worth, or he's unable to recognize that he also deserves to be loved on an equal footing.
Hmm.
He always wants to be put the other person on a pedestal and serve the other partner. So he feels that okay, if I do this, then the partner will recognize me and love me for whatever I'm doing. So I mean, this narrator in this particular
Is
book
very
is
similar.
he is anxiously attached.
Right.
Then there is the anxious avoidant person who is
Hmm.
like very very concerned about protecting their own independence. Like they're also afraid of the relationship, but in a
Hmm.
different way. So
Hmm.
they're probably hurt by some other guy or some other past thing, and they don't want it to repeat. And the moment someone comes too close to them, they just push away that person because they're also afraid of intimacy, but in a different way.
Right.
And for them, nothing matters more than their own independence. So that is Nastenka, who is anxiously avoided. And I feel like this is the worst combination anyone can have. So that's why I was trying to understand, like, how do you see this character? Like, obviously you said that this guy person has her own character, but she also has her model which has already been set up by this guy who went to Moscow.
Right.
Like even the anxiously avoidant person doesn't really consider themselves worthy of any healthy relationship because they feel that okay, I have to be very low maintenance. I have to ask for very less,
Yeah.
because if I ask something more, then the person might
Leave.
yeah. So there is this fear of abandonment which is very very rooted in both the people. Both of them are afraid of being abandoned, but one person tries to deal with it by overgiving and overcompensating in a big manner, and other person is already hopeless. They feel anyway this is going to go to shit, so
Hmm.
let me do the least and not get hurt by this, whatever entanglement.
Right.
So
And
that equation plays out so well. I mean, now that I've heard so many episodes after reading White Knights, and also after speaking to real humans,
right.
uh, which which makes me feel that Dostoevsky somehow got this. He got this gist of human nature. Like he's able to replicate real life.
So, like Dostoevsky was definitely a person who had a very strong internal monologue going on about everything and anything at every point of life.
Yeah,
He was always making mental notes of things, observing things, and that is very evident when you read his stuff because he brings out the human nature in such a good way. And there is a good chance that maybe these are the characters that he witnessed back in his own day, and we are just living with the modern iterations of the similar people that we see right now. And maybe that is the reason why classics are classics because they have a human element to them which is not a fact, which is not basically an aspect of the time and age they are in, which is true to human nature, which sticks across years, and that is why the stories are so resonating with people
yeah.
even today.
I mean, I just wanted to read this part
Hmm.
where his needy self is really shown well,
Okay.
and he's talking to Nastenka, and he's saying, Forgive me if I again say something not quite, but
Hmm.
here it is. I can't help coming here tomorrow. I'm a dreamer. I have so little real life that I regard such moments as this one now. to be so rare that I can't help repeating these moments in my dreams. I will dream of you all night for an entire week, all year long. I will come here tomorrow without fail, exactly here, to this very spot, exactly at this time, and I'll be happy as I recall what happened yesterday. This place is already dear to me. I already have two or three such places in Petersburg. Once I even shed tears because of a memory like you. Who knows, perhaps 10 minutes ago, you too were crying because of a memory. But forgive me, I have forgotten myself again. Perhaps at one time you were particularly happy here. Very, I mean, like, this is what he's saying. Like, he's living on, like, some splashes of human interaction, some
And
moments.
revisiting them again and again. And
Yeah,
even right now, he's giving a sort of premonition. Like I am building memories with humans. He even when the person is right in front of him, he cannot believe that this won't be a memory. That this will maybe something turn into something longer. He's already placing her in the set of memories that he has.
yeah,
And at this point, as somewhere around this point, he tells Nastenka that, hey, I just want to have two words with you. But then he ends up giving her a very long lecture about everything that he feels about.
yeah.
And at that point, Nastenka is like, hey, you just said you will say two words.
Hmm.
This is much, much longer. What's wrong with you? But he doesn't hold back even then. He's so unashamedly attached to that sole source of human interaction that he's like, I'll just make the most of it.
Yeah. I mean, that brings me to other, I mean, something we were talking before we started about how Indian cinema, especially Bollywood, has been inspired by this particular book. I mean, I myself was very much surprised to know of one movie which was somewhat, connected to, I mean, directly a copy paste of this story. It was Savaria, right? It was a
Yes,
very
yes.
unimpressive movie. But I was really surprised when you said Jab We Met is also, inspired by White Knights.
So this is just a theory that
I mean, it was a very interesting theory. I think everyone should know your theory.
so this is just a theory basically, yeah. So I was talking to a friend and he pointed it out to me that Imtiaz Ali first wrote a story which was a screenplay adaptation of White Knights, and it was turned into a movie by some other director called Ahista Ahista.
Hmm,
And after Ahista Ahista, Imtiaz Ali wrote Jab We Met.
hmm,
Now, Jab We Met also has three central characters.
yeah.
The first is obviously Geet, who's a very peppy version of Nastenka. Then we have Aditya, who's basically the protagonist. He's gloomy, he's sad. We don't know why he's sad at the beginning. He's just
Yeah.
sad. That's his defining feature. And we know that Geet is going to get married. There's a guy.
Hmm,
We get the same context like White Knights, right?
yeah.
Geet is waiting for the guy.
Uh,
Aditya is gloomy and she catches up and they get talking. And then
hmm,
they spend the next couple of days or something roaming around because of whatever mishap happens to them.
hmm,
Eventually they come back.
yeah.
Geet, Aditya, and the guy,
Oh, are
fiance.
we unintentionally giving out a spoiler here?
No, we are not, because Imtiaz Ali changed the ending.
Ending. Oh, okay, fine.
We are not giving a spoiler
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, correct.
So this is just the inspiration
Yeah,
which basically got highlighted in our mind while talking. That this is very similar, but the ending is different, and the characters are actually also very different because the original Nastenka is very gloomy, very sad. She has a very sheltered life.
yeah,
Geet is a very different person. Geet is a
yeah.
bomb. So that is very different. Aditya himself has a job. He's a CEO or something, I think.
He
Uh,
is basically the hire of a company which is not doing well,
Oh,
apparently.
okay, right. So he anyway, he has money, he has a job, he has prospects in life, which is again very different from the protagonist.
Yeah,
But the key elements, three characters, romantic entanglements,
yeah.
the root elements are the same,
Oh,
but then you get a very
I
different
mean, if we
output.
talk about the real adaptations, then it would be a spoiler.
Yes,
I
definitely.
mean, Savaria, and you said there was one 1960s,
Yeah, so it is
1970s.
called Chalia.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting who the actors and directors, the involved people were, but it was
yeah.
set in the context of the partition.
Hmm.
And they added a lot of local elements to like adapt the story for an Indian audience.
And that was having the same plot as White
Yeah, it
Knights.
had quite a similar plot. It was also the ending was not changed, but a lot more other elements got added and subtracted.
So that actually makes me wonder. There is so much of huge cultural impact of such a short story, right?
Exactly, that is so
And I don't
surprising.
understand why. Is it because of its shocking ending, or is it because of its accurate reading of human nature?
I
I
would
mean, like
definitely.
every person, whether an artist or not, you were also saying that you're trying to write a screenplay of it, right? Along
Yeah,
with your, I don't know, your partner. So, I mean, why is it hitting so much? Is it because it speaks so much truth?
it is definitely something to do with the human nature, to be honest. Like, the main feature that we have here is a guy telling about a girl he met one day and had a really great experience, which is something I think each one of us has
Yeah.
done or like heard someone else do at some point. All of us had friends who were like, hey, I met this girl and she was amazing and then she left
Uh,
me. So this sort of story is very central to human existence in general, and then Dostoevsky brings it to life very beautifully.
hmm,
The core elements are something which can be adapted to every culture. It is not something that happens only in Russia.
hmm,
Meeting a girl and then getting infatuated is something that can happen
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah.
So I think that is where people get stuck, and that is where even right now people are loving it a lot because it is like just after COVID, everyone went out, everyone discovered humans again, and they're like, "Hey, I love this one."
Uh,
So that is why I think it has truly uh, stood up against the test of time.
so, is there anything you actually learned about human nature? Like, we're talking so much about human nature, right? I mean, is there something which stood out? Something you didn't know about before reading this?
How quickly people can fall in love.
Hmm,
That was the defining feature actually, because like, wow, that guy doesn't even take 4 nights to confess that he's fully in love and starts planning a life with her. He thinks of getting married or whatever. He starts thinking, where will I live, what will I do. It's entirely like that Dhoom 2 sequence with like Uday Chopra. He has gotten it, and that is the thing, na. It resonates. It travels across cultures. It travels across people's minds, boundaries, everything. Because every guy has dreamt of a girl and started thinking of how they'll look like after getting married. So the core thing about human nature that gets revealed here is that we are all looking for hope, to be honest. But
hmm,
it's just that some of us are too disappointed to hold on to it. Some of us are in circumstances where we'll hold on to hope no matter what happens, and that
hmm,
is where personality differences come in. Not
hmm,
everyone responds to situations in a similar way, and that is what we see in Nastenka and the protagonist as well.
hmm,
Both of them react very differently to living very sheltered, lonely lives.
hmm. I mean, in fact, I'm asking you this question, but I never asked this question to myself.
Okay.
I was actually thinking about an answer, probably what I took away from this book.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, you said like how quickly people fall in love, etc., etc. Right? I think it's in human nature to, want to love
Want
someone and
love, yeah.
also be loved by someone.
Right,
But there is also a balance, right?
right,
Like you have the desire to love someone else, but it should also be equally important for you also to be loved by the same person.
right.
And for some people, maybe they do try for that equitable
Mm-hmm.
relationship or some
Hmm.
healthy equation. But sometimes, in the like the case of this particular narrator,
Hmm.
he has no opportunity for human interaction itself.
I think he has plenty of opportunities, and he's just a person who thinks that he is above all of this. So like, when I was reading this character, I saw that he had a very weird mix of inferiority complex and superiority complex chasing each other inside his mind.
uh,
At some points, he was like, I am the best thing to the
mm,
world. I will do everything. At some points, he's like, I am living in despair. What's the point of anything? He has
mm,
cobwebs hanging in his room. He does
mm,
not even bother getting cleaning up and all of that.
mm,
And at the same time, he starts getting so hopeful the moment Nastenka enters, while when we are starting this book, he talks about this instance that a person might tip his hat towards him and they might smile, but they hold themselves back from smiling because they don't want to get attached too much.
Hmm.
What I feel is that this person has chances to interact with other people, to connect with other people, but due to some history or some trauma that is not revealed to us, he
Hmm.
has this mindset that he's too scared.
Hmm.
And when he is too scared, even then, he takes one plunge,
Hmm.
and that is where the floodgates open and all of his emotional outburst happens. I don't think the society is acting against him, but he does have that sort of mindset that, hey, the society and me are two different things. We are not
Hmm.
connected. That is what I felt.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing because yeah, let's say he has some individual has enough opportunities to interact with humans, but for some reason they are not, and they single out one person for that, for pouring out their entire heart,
Hmm.
or they see something, or in the case of Nastenka, she was helpless, right?
Right.
So there was some value for this guy to go and be the savior and make
Exactly.
himself look even more superior.
Exactly.
Or probably he was probably trying to feed his own superiority complex,
Right.
I guess.
So like Nastinka was still getting multiple outlets
Yeah.
until she was 14 or 15. She was getting lessons.
Hmm.
She had a couple of friends she used to visit. She
Hmm.
mentions that there are helpers in the house, and then the lodger comes in obviously. So
Yeah.
Nastinka has like constant bits and pieces of human interaction intertwined in her life, as
Yeah.
compared to this guy who we have no clue since how long he's just lying alone in the city. And he has
Yeah.
one helper in there, and the most he does is that he calls her unclever. I think that was the adjective.
Yeah.
He just makes that sort of remarks on her and never really tries to interact with her even properly. So it's an attitude problem, I think.
Yeah, I think probably I was just getting to it, but you actually debunked my theory. Congrats on that.
What
But
was
I
the
think
theory? What was the theory?
my theory was, I mean, there are two aspects, right? One is to be loved and to love someone else.
Yes, yes.
And there's usually a balance.
Right,
In a healthy equation, there's a
right.
balance. You're also loved and you're also loving someone else.
Yes,
But in this case, because of his loneliness, whether it is
right,
manufactured or self imposed or imposed by the circumstances, he didn't have that opportunity to find an equitable equation.
right.
So he still wanted it. It
Hmm.
was almost like an addiction or a craving.
Right, right.
So he was almost addicted to the idea of loving someone.
Yeah,
And
that is very
here
evident.
he made a compromise that I will pour my love on this person and hope to get it back at some other later time, like investing in some stock and getting the returns later. But that is not how it works because she had invested her stock somewhere else. So
Right,
the returns, I don't know. So I think it was like putting the horse before the cart, or I don't know,
right.
cart.
Cart before the horse, yeah.
Yeah, cart before the horse. And it was because of this addiction. I think there's a in I think for every human,
Hmm.
irrespective of the culture or the age or the language or whatever it is, there is this addiction to the idea of being in love, I guess. If not addiction, at least they want to be in that place. And sometimes they probably have to find the right person, or sometimes they take a shortcut.
Right.
And I mean, it's like taking a shortcut to the common desire which every human has, and the fallout of that is kind of
What the story is. Yeah.
story is about. um, and also there is you
Don't you
know
think like this character has like very major main character energy?
the narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously he wants to self-aggrandize
Yeah.
himself, like he wants to put himself as the center of his universe, and
Mm-hmm.
portray himself as a hero.
And
I
I
mean,
think,
to
yeah,
actually justify his heroism, he has to go and save Nastenka.
exactly. Yeah.
Like in a healthy relationship, you can't go and save anyone. Everyone has to save themselves.
Right.
But if you try to set up this equation in a way where you are a savior and because of your acts of saving, you become a hero in your own eyes. And after becoming a hero, you expect some sort of a reward.
Exactly.
I think that is something which leads to the tension in this
Hmm,
story.
hmm, hmm. I think that 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 main character and energy that I am seeing is what is quite pivotal to understanding this story, because if you see, this guy does not talk about himself in first person. He says that let's talk about me in the third person because then I'll be more comfortable. He says that to Nastenka, and he refers to himself as the hero. And he,
Yeah.
on when he's describing his day in life, when he's describing what his life is made of, he mentions that the hero does this, the hero does that, the hero lives like that. He is living a fantasy. He is living a fantasy where he's the big guy who's gonna do something great, who's gonna have everything settled one day. And so far, he hasn't had it settled because the world is too shitty to understand him. I think that's the mindset he's coming up with.
Yeah, I mean that actually made me think of these lines from the book. He says, "Oh Nastenka, Nastenka, do you know you have reconciled me with myself for a good long time? Do you know that I now do you know that now I will not think so badly of myself as I sometimes have done?
Hmm.
Do you know that now perhaps I will no longer suffer anguish for having committed a crime and a sin in my life?
Hmm.
Because a life like my because a life like that is a crime and sin. I don't think that I've been exaggerating anything to you. For God's sake, Nastenka, don't think that because sometimes I'm overcome by moments of such anguish, because at those moments it begins to seem that I will never be able to begin living a real life, because it already seems that I have lost all sense, all feeling for the genuine, the real, because in the end I curse myself. Because after my fantastic nights, I am visited by sobering moments that are horrible."
So that is the thing, right? He is mentally immersed in a scenario where he's living an amazing life, where he's doing everything great, but then reality is like knock knock, hey, you are kind of horrible, and then he falls down.
And he is calling his own life as a crime and sin,
Right,
because the standard in his imaginary world is like so high that since he is not able to meet that standard,
right,
he thinks his current life is a crime and sin.
exactly. So he's like a person who's very prone to exaggeration, definitely.
I mean, this actually sort of brings me to the few last thoughts I had. I mean, the last questions I had for you.
Yeah,
So you also have read other works of Dostoevsky, right?
right.
Do you have any recommendations for others?
Mm,
What impacted you as much as White Nights, or something which you would also warn the reader not to pick up too early?
okay. So I will definitely suggest pick White Knights first. Go from smaller to bigger. That is the sensible way. Do not start with Crime or Punishment or the Brothers Karamazov. But beyond White Knights, I next read Notes from Underground, which don't read if you are in a good state of mind, and also don't read if you are in a very bad state of mind.
Then when should they read it?
Read it when you are like stable, when you can tolerate a blow to yourself, to
Uh,
your existence, because just as we read here, the protagonist calls his own life a sin. Notes from Underground and is a continued account of a similar person in a way. It's about
mm,
a person who feels that he's hidden in an underground world, and he has a very internalized sense of hating himself and also hating the world. So there's a lot of hatred going on there.
mm.
Don't read it when you are in a weak state of mind, definitely. It had a lot of impact on me, and not in a good way. So that is just a word of caution. Uh,
Notes from underground.
from Underground, yes.
Yeah.
But another book from Dostoevsky that I am really enjoying right now, I haven't finished it
Mm,
completely. It is called Demons. So it is
mm,
about a couple of people who enter a town, and then anarchy breaks in, political and social.
Mm,
and it has really great characters who are representative of the different ideologies that were prevalent in Russia at that time. It
mm,
is a satirical work. It is told in a similar manner to all of his other works, wherein one person narrates events that happened in the past. The method is quite similar, but the work is very different in tone from White Knights and Notes from Underground because of the subject matter that it is dealing with. And it is way closer to Dostoevsky's philosophy over religion, life, and other things, which he does not really expound a lot upon in White Knights, but
mm.
he goes there in the longer works. So that is another one that I'm really loving right now.
And you also said you're trying to finish the Brothers
Oh
Karamazov.
yes, oh yes. That is a that is a bigger beast which I'll probably tackle somewhere this year down the line. But
How much have you finished of?
I read it last year actually. I read somewhere around like 125 pages or something, and
Mm,
then I was like, no, this is too much. I was losing track of it to be honest because I was reading it in very small bits and pieces, and
mm,
then I thought I need to like have it in a hard copy in front of me and then understand it properly and make notes and read it that way. So
mm,
I've just given up on it for the time being. So I'll first finish Demons, obviously,
mm.
then maybe some other books by some other authors give a bit of a break from Dostoevsky to reframe things and then tackle this one big one.
Yeah, I took around 5 6 months to finish it.
Oh
So
god.
I ended up reading only just like 20 pages a day,
Hmm.
and on some weekends I used to finish 30 or 40. But it was all so intense
Right.
that you can't read anything beyond 40 pages of
Exactly.
it.
So the problem with me is that most of the time when I read things, I do it in the metro when I'm going to work or
Yeah,
like coming back. And Dostoevsky is not the writer you
yeah,
can read on the metro.
yeah. You can't read it on metro.
So there's a lot of things you need to remember. You might want to take notes. You might want to cry in between. A lot
No,
happens.
yeah, I was telling you, I cried at the end of Brothers
Right.
Karamazov in office.
Exactly. So you
Yeah,
can't just walk around
you
reading.
have to cry when you're reading
Exactly.
Dostoevsky.
So that's the scene basically. Are you looking forward to any book next?
Yeah, I'm trying to finish Crime and Punishment. Like I'm
Okay.
in the last half of it, not last half. I think I've read 400 out of those 670 pages.
So like, would you like to give a bit of context? What is the synopsis? Where is it set?
Crime and Punishment.
Yeah.
Crime and Punishment is about, I think, Dostoevsky's thesis about crime, guilt, shame, and all of this mixed with superiority complex.
Superiority complex is like Dostoevsky's
Yeah,
best friend.
so his characters are having all of this together, and I mean, there's not much of a spoiler in it. It's
Hmm.
like the main character has committed two murders because he was living in poverty and he thought that the money owned by the money lender should have been his because he is intellectually
Hmm.
superior
Hmm.
and he should not be forced to be worried about day to day things like money and all of that. But
That is a good philosophy to have.
so it's like someone from I don't know, North Delhi coming and committing a murder in South
Why
Delhi.
specifically North Delhi? What was that?
Because there are some poor income areas over there. I think that is what is reflected in
Right.
Crime and Punishment as well. So it's like he comes up with so many theories about what is the nature of crime
Hmm.
and how much guilt a person should have.
Right.
And it's not just about the thoughts that you're having after committing a crime, but also about the reaction of your body to the
Hmm.
feeling of being a guilty person.
Okay.
Um, so I think, and also Dostoevsky as an author is obsessed about the Bible and biblical stories. Like he's obsessed about God and what is the relationship between God and humans.
He definitely had a lot to say about religion.
Yeah. So again, even in the context of characters in Crime and Punishment, there are people who are destitute, but they're still they're very religious. They're pious almost, and the protagonist of the story is often mocking the pious people. Like, what are you being thankful to God
Right.
for? What has God done for you to? for you to be so loyal to this entity. I mean, I still haven't come to the end of it.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's a very, very intense book. You can't read more than 20 pages of it in a single sitting. I hope to finish and see where it takes me, because I finished Brothers Karamazov, which is touted to be the peak of his literary prowess, and Crime and Punishment is like there, right there at the top.
Hmm.
So, and I also hope to finish Demons also. Even I have a copy here.
Oh, nice.
So I mean, I went to the bookshop and I bought 3, 4 books of Dostoevsky, and
Like, give me everything.
store, the store owner was looking at me like this, and she
Is
said,
this guy okay?
"That is some kind of commitment." She said that comment. Oh, this is some serious
Yeah, because
commitment.
all of those are like big
Yeah.
books.
So I said, yeah, I'm very committed to Dostoevsky. So I hope to finish it. Let's see how far it can take. I think we did have like a very broad conversation about
Right.
White Knights and Dostoevsky, and I think I mean once I mean Notes from Underground, even I have read it. I think maybe we should talk about it sometime.
Definitely.
Um, but I would like to, end this with your favorite quote from White Knights. Like, I mean, you can take some time to find out where it is. We can pause till then,
No,
and then
I actually have it on top of my mind.
that's even more great. You're a real fan of Dostoevsky, then.
So I have loved this line since day one. When I first encountered it, when we started working on the screenplay, we
Yeah,
tried to find ways to incorporate this because this was such a key element of the whole thing. So
yeah.
when Nastenka and the protagonist first start talking, they are telling each other about their lives. So Nastenka at one point tells him, "But how could you have lived and not have a story to tell?"
Wow, yeah,
And then you are like, man, and then you are forced to think about yourself, like, do I have a story to tell? I have lived, do I have something to justify it for, or am I also building like fantasy,
yeah,
or am I also like building air castles and just not doing
mm,
anything? That really makes you think what life is all about and what you are doing.
yeah,
So that is something that I've loved, like really loved. Another one that I really love is that when things go bad, actually. So no, not giving the context behind this one, but
huh,
uh, uh, the protagonist holds Nastenka's hand and at one point tells her that, "How are you so cold while my hand burns?"
wow,
I'm forgetting the exact wording of this, but this is the gist of it. Like, my hand burns and you are so cold,
yeah,
and it's such a good contrast. And I think anyone who has ever been heartbroken has sort of felt it in a way.
yeah,
So these are like a couple of things that I really love in this very short 70-page book, but it
yeah.
has a lot of good prose to offer.
How can you live and not have a story to tell?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect place to end it. I hope
And
that
obviously, the last line, which we
yeah,
have not talked about,
yeah, exactly.
another iconic one.
Yeah, I think the readers should think also, like, I mean, I think this line should motivate a lot of people to pick up
Yeah.
this book and read it. Like, everyone does have a story to tell, but I don't know whether they consider it to be,
Like, do you consider it a story worth telling? Do you tell it unashamedly, or do you think that it is not worth it? Do you think that it is a sin like the protagonist?
yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
question.
among all the authors I've come across, I've found Dostoevsky to be the most powerful one. I don't know for what reason. And I think this is not a difficult read. I think anyone who listens to this
Yeah.
can probably pick up this book and finish it.
Maybe
Uh,
this can be a good way to like get back to reading for a lot of people because it is
exactly.
a very short and engaging story.
Yeah. So thanks for coming over and having this conversation. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I really enjoyed having this discussion.
Great then. I hope the listeners also enjoy this. Thank you and have a great day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.